You're nothing. You'll never amount to anything. That's what my old man spat at me right before he kicked me out of the house. I didn't argue. I just gave him a small smile and walked away. Funny thing is, just yesterday, he showed up at my office desperate, practically pleading once he finally realized what I'd become. I still remember that moment like it was yesterday. His voice rang out in our cramped little living room, full of rage, his face twisted in pure disgust as he jabbed his finger toward the front door. Get out of my house. I just stood there, stunned. My hands were clenched so tight, my fingernails were digging into my palms. I knew he'd be disappointed in me. I even braced myself for him to yell. But that level of cold, brutal finality in his voice? That hit harder than I'd ever expected. It stung in a way I didn't want to admit. Dad, save it, he snapped, stepping in closer. You're 18. No job. No plans. No drive. You're just a burden. He stared me down like he was daring me to argue. Daring me to prove him wrong. Go on then, he said, voice full of disdain. Step out into the real world. See what it does to nobodies like you. I swallowed hard. My mom was sitting on the couch, eyes glued to the floor, hands twisted together in her lap. She didn't say a word. She wouldn't even look at me. My little brother peeked out from the hallway, wide-eyed and scared, but he stayed quiet too. Nobody was going to stop this. Nobody was going to step in. Part of me thought maybe I should have begged him to let me stay. Maybe I should have fought harder for a place in that house. But I didn't. Instead, I smiled. Not because I was okay, far from it. Not because it didn't hurt. It did. But because deep down, I knew. One day, I'd make him choke on every single word he'd thrown at me. I turned around, grabbed my old backpack, and walked out without another glance. That was it. That was the last time I ever stepped foot in that house. The first night on my own? That was the roughest. I had no clue where to go. Not $1 to my name. No one to call. I wandered the streets with no real direction, and every step made the weight of it all sink in a little more. The night air felt colder than I remembered. Even the city lights seemed harsher somehow. After hours of walking, I ended up in this little 24-hour diner, just sitting there with a glass of water, trying to figure out what the hell I was gonna do. The waitress, older lady, kind face, must have noticed I hadn't ordered anything. You waiting on someone, sweetheart? She asked. I just shook my head. She paused for a second, like she was thinking it over, then walked off. A few minutes later, she came back with a plate of scrambled eggs and toast. This one's on the house, she said gently. I wanted to turn it down, pride and all, but my stomach growled before I could even open my mouth. I gave her a quiet thank you and ate every single bite like it was a feast. That was the first act of kindness I'd been shown since I walked out of my father's front door. But kindness alone wouldn't keep me warm at night. Wouldn't put a roof over my head. I needed work. I needed money. I needed a plan. What I needed was a plan. For the next few days, I just did whatever I could to survive, crashing on park benches, ducking into empty buildings, even sleeping in a bus station when the rain wouldn't let up. I washed up in public bathrooms, hoping to find one that wasn't completely disgusting. With every cold night and every long day, my pride chipped away a little more. Then, on the fifth night, I ended up standing in front of a beat-up old garage on the edge of town. The front window had a handwritten sign, "Help Wanted." No experience necessary. I took a breath, squared my shoulders, and stepped inside. At that point, I didn't have much left to lose. The place smelled like burnt oil and steel and sweat. The clatter of tools mixed with the low hum of rock music in the background. A big guy in overalls stood over an open hood, wiping his hands with a grease-stained rag. He glanced up at me, eyebrow raised. "You lost or something, kid?" I shook my head. "I saw your sign. Need help?" He looked me over, the wrinkled shirt, the worn-out backpack, the tired eyes. It didn't take a genius to figure out I was down bad. "You ever turned a wrench before?" "No, sir," I said, honest. "But I'm a quick learner. I just need a shot." He let out a sharp breath through his nose and tossed the rag on the bench. "What's your name?" "Nick." "Well, Nick," he said, folding his arms, "I don't run a charity. You mess up, you're out. You're late, you're out. Act like the work's beneath you, you're out. Got that? I nodded. No hesitation. He stared a second longer, then motioned toward the back. Grab a broom and clean up that spill by the lift. You start now. It wasn't glamorous, not even close. But it was something. For the next few weeks, I showed up before sunrise and stayed until long after dark. I mopped, fetched tools, swept every corner of that shop like it was my only shot at staying afloat, which it kind of was. My hands, once soft and clean, turned rough and black with grease. Every muscle in my body ached, but the soreness felt earned. It meant I was finally moving forward. And over time, the boss, his name was Frank, started to notice. He taught me the basics, changing oil, swapping brake pads, diagnosing engine trouble just by the sound. He wasn't the warm and fuzzy type, but when he gave you a compliment, it meant something. "You're not half bad, kid," he mumbled one night as we finished up, both of us covered in grime. And I'll be honest, that was the closest thing to a father's approval I'd ever gotten. I saved every cent, only spending on food and a cheap motel when I could swing it. It wasn't much, but for the first time since my dad kicked me out, I had hope. And I made myself a promise I would never be that powerless again. Months passed, then a year. I wasn't just scraping by anymore, I was learning. Getting good. Frank let me work on full repairs, and soon enough, customers were asking for me by name. I had a feel for machines. If it was broken, I could figure it out. If I didn't know how, I'd stay up all night reading until I did. But as much as I appreciated the garage, I knew this couldn't be the end of the road. I wanted more. One evening, while locking up, Frank tossed me a cold soda and leaned against the bench. "You ever think about doing something bigger?" I blinked. "What do you mean?" "You got a brain, kid. You pick things up fast. You really want to be elbow deep in busted engines for the next 30 years? I shook my head slowly. "No, sir." "Then what's the plan?" I didn't have one. And the fact that I didn't haunted me for weeks. I'd spent so much energy surviving that I hadn't allowed myself to think about the future. But Frank's words kept bouncing around in my head. If I didn't map something out, I'd end up just like the guys who'd been in that garage since the 90s, burned out, bitter, stuck. Then one day, fate, or maybe just dumb luck, kicked open a door. A black Mercedes rolled into the shop. Sleek, spotless, expensive. The guy driving it stepped out in a tailored suit, glued to his phone. Tossed his keys on the counter like he owned the place. "Battery's dead," he muttered. "I need it fixed fast." I was wiping my hands nearby when I saw him, and something about him just screamed power. He wasn't just another customer. He ran things. He built things. "You in a rush?" I asked. He looked me over like I was just some grease monkey. "I've got a meeting in 2 hours. You think you can handle it by then?" I could have just nodded and said yeah. But something in me, something bold, spoke up instead. "I'll get it done in one. But answer me something first." He raised an eyebrow. "What? How does someone like you afford a car like that?" He smirked. "I build businesses. Start small, scale fast. I see an opportunity, I take it." That clicked in my brain like a light switch flipping on. I got his car up and running quicker than he expected. Before he left, I asked him one more thing. "What would it take for someone like me to build something like you did?" He stared at me for a second, like he was trying to figure out if I was serious. Then he reached into his jacket and handed me a business card. "If you're for real, come find me," he said. "Most don't. But I've got a feeling you're not like most." And just like that, everything shifted. I stared at that card for days. It felt like a golden ticket. A shot at a life where people like my father didn't get to define me. Where success came from grit and brains, not privilege. The name on it read Jonathan Mercer, venture capitalist. I didn't know the full weight of that title yet, but I knew it was something big. Frank eventually caught me zoning out at work and asked what was up. I told him about Mercer and the card. He wiped his hands and nodded. "You thinking about going for it?" "I don't know," I said honestly. "Feels like I'd be diving into something way over my head." Frank let out a rare laugh. "Kid, you came in here knowing jack. Now you're my best damn mechanic. If you think you can't learn your way up from that, then maybe you are a little dumb." That was all I needed to hear. The next morning, I sucked in a breath and called Mercer's office, half expecting to get brushed off. But to my surprise, the receptionist didn't hesitate. "Ah, Mr. Mercer said you might call. Can you come in this afternoon?" Was I ready? Not even close. But I showed up anyway. His office felt like another world. Clean lines, glass walls, people in tailored suits moving around like they had somewhere important to be. Meanwhile, there I was, in scuffed-up boots and grease-stained jeans. I didn't fit in, but I walked in like I did. Mercer was waiting. He leaned back in his leather chair, watching me as I sat across from him. "You actually showed," he said with that half-smirk of his. "I did," I nodded. "All right, kid. Let's see what you're made of." The next hour nearly broke me. He hit me with question after question like he was trying to crack me open. "What do you know about business? What would you do with 10 grand right now? What's the biggest risk you've ever taken?" I didn't lie. I told him straight I didn't know much about business, but I knew how to work my ass off. I'd take that 10 grand and put it into something I believed in. And the biggest risk? Betting on myself when I had nothing and no one. That was the moment he leaned forward. "You've got guts," he said. "Guts get you through the door. Brains keep you in the room. So, are you willing to learn?" "Yes," I said, without hesitation. That's all he needed. "I'm not handing you a damn thing," he said. "But I'll teach you how to earn it. You'll start as an intern. No pay. You'll learn everything: money, deals, strategy. Most people quit in a week. You think you can handle it?" I looked him dead in the eye. "I don't quit." He grinned. "Good. Let's get to work." What followed was the hardest stretch of my life. By day, I was still at the garage, covered in grease. By night, I was neck-deep in finance books, spreadsheets, case studies that made my head pound. Mercer kept me busy. He gave me material to read, problems to solve, deals to analyze. I started seeing the world differently: how money moved, how the powerful made decisions, how the game was really played. It wasn't about luck. It was about leverage. About knowing when to strike, and how. I stumbled. I embarrassed myself more than once in front of real businessmen. But I kept showing up. Kept learning. Then one night, after a long stretch of reviewing a deal, Mercer looked up from the papers and gave a small nod. "Not bad," he said. "You might actually make something of yourself." That hit me harder than any compliment I'd ever gotten. But it wasn't enough. I didn't just want to make something of myself. I wanted everything they told me I couldn't have. I wanted to own the game. Months rolled by. Then a year. I wasn't just Mercer's intern anymore, I was his right-hand man. I was learning how to spot opportunities, how to close deals, how to turn nothing into something. And one day, Mercer called me into his office and dropped a folder in front of me. "You've been watching," he said. "Now it's time to act." Inside was a company, an auto parts supplier on its last legs. Potential was there, but the leadership was a mess. "What do you think?" he asked. "Is it worth saving?" I looked at the numbers, shook my head. "No. But it's worth taking." He grinned. "Then take it." That was my first deal. My first real move. I negotiated. I maneuvered. And in a matter of weeks, I owned the thing for pennies on the dollar. I slashed waste, restructured the whole operation, and within 6 months, the place was turning a profit. Mercer watched the whole thing unfold. "You're catching on faster than I thought," he said. "Most people hesitate. You don't." I shrugged. "I can't afford to." He chuckled. "That's why you're gonna win." From there, it was like a switch flipped. I sold the company for 3 times what I paid. Took that cash and rolled it into the next opportunity. And the next. People started talking. Started recognizing my name. I wasn't just scraping by, I was making waves. And with every move I made, I could feel it, something inside me was changing. I wasn't the same kid my father threw out. That fear, that hesitation, it was gone. Burned away by fire and failure. One night, I found myself standing in my own office, looking out over the city lights. From park benches to penthouses, that's how far I'd come. But I wasn't done. Not even close. I wanted more. I wanted power. Real power. And I was about to go after the biggest deal of my life. A dying corporation, an old manufacturing giant that everyone else had written off. But I saw something different. If I could turn it around, I'd prove to the world and to myself that I wasn't just lucky. I was inevitable. Mercer, though, he had his doubts. This is too big. Too risky, he warned me. If it goes sideways, you'll lose everything. I locked eyes with him and replied, then I won't let it go wrong. From that moment on, I was all in. I rounded up investors, pushed through some pretty aggressive buyouts, and in just a few short months, the company was mine. But that was just the beginning. The real challenge came next, turning the whole thing around. I barely slept, pouring every hour I had into rebuilding. I cut the fat, restructured the mess, updated our production lines. Every decision felt like I was walking a wire with no safety net. One misstep, and everything I'd built would crumble. And honestly, it almost did. There were days where I truly thought Mercer might have been right, that maybe I had bitten off more than I could chew. But failure? That was never an option for me. And then, third quarter hit. That's when the tides turned. Profits jumped. The stock took off. Those same investors who once looked at me like I was crazy? Now they couldn't throw money at me fast enough. I didn't just save the company, I transformed it into something stronger. Something untouchable. That's when it hit me. This wasn't just success. This was my empire. And I wasn't just wealthy anymore, I was invincible. I stood there in my penthouse, surrounded by the view of the city I now owned a piece of, and a question crept in: did he know? Did my father even have a clue that the son he tossed aside had built something this powerful? He was about to find out. Life's funny like that. Cruel, sometimes. Because soon enough, my past came knocking. I hadn't thought about him in years. Success had wiped him from my memory. I never wondered where he ended up. Never cared. The day he kicked me out was the day he stopped existing to me. Until yesterday. I was in my office, knee-deep in the details of a massive acquisition, when my assistant buzzed in. Sir, there's someone here to see you. I didn't look up. Do I have them on the calendar? No. But he says it's important. I sighed, already annoyed. Then tell him. He says his name is Robert Carter. I froze. That name hit me like a gut punch. I hadn't heard it in years, but it still held weight. My father. I clicked over to the security feed, and there he was. Standing in the lobby like some lost soul. The same man who tossed me out of his life like trash. Only now? He didn't look so high and mighty. His shoulders slumped, his suit looked like it came from a bargain rack and didn't fit right. His face, once full of arrogant confidence, now told a different story, wrinkled, worn out, and desperate. I leaned back, the hint of a smirk creeping in. So this is how far Robert Carter had fallen. I hit the intercom. Send him in. A minute later, the door opened, and he stepped inside. At first, he didn't recognize me. His eyes roamed the room, taking in the view, the designer furniture, the custom desk that probably cost more than he had left to his name. He swallowed hard. You're the CEO? I laced my fingers together and leaned forward. Says so on the door. His face went pale as the truth settled in. The son he threw away? The one he called useless? I was the man sitting behind the desk now. The man he needed. I let the silence grow thick between us until he finally managed to speak. I didn't know. Clearly, I said. He shifted awkwardly. Look, Nick, I'm not here to dig up the past. I need. He hesitated, visibly struggling. I need a job. The irony practically burned in my chest. Robert Carter, the man who once told me I'd never amount to anything, was now begging me for help. If he was hoping for grace, he'd come to the wrong place. I stood slowly, adjusting my cufflinks. A job, huh? He nodded quickly. Desperation painted across his face. Anything. I just need a shot. I began to pace behind my desk, pretending to think it over. You know, Dad, I remember something you told me once. I was a teenager, and you were pissed about something, I can't even remember what. But your words stuck. I turned to face him. You said, you're a nobody. You'll never make it. He flinched like I'd slapped him. Nick, But now you need me, I cut in, every word deliberate. Funny how life works. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. I wasn't going to let him escape this unscathed. I wanted him to feel every ounce of the humiliation he once made me live through. You know what? I finally said. I'll give you a job. His eyes lit up, hopeful. Really? I grinned. Yep. You'll start as a janitor. His smile vanished. You'll mop floors, haul trash, and answer to people half your age. It's honest work. And since you were always telling me to quit whining and work harder, I expect you to do exactly that. His face crumpled with shame, but he nodded. I'll take it. Good, I said, walking to the door. Your uniform's waiting downstairs. Don't be late. He left with his head hanging low, and I stood there for a moment, soaking it in. This wasn't about revenge. It wasn't about money. This was justice. But I wasn't done, not yet. For weeks, I watched him. The same man who used to bark orders and hold power over me was now scrubbing floors, cleaning toilets, and taking flack from kids half his age. Every time he messed up, he got a ton lashing, just like the ones he used to give me. And I made sure he felt it all. The helplessness. The embarrassment. Then one afternoon, I called him in. He stood in front of my desk, worn out and broken. Did I do something wrong? He asked, voice barely above a whisper. I leaned back in my chair. No. You've done exactly what I expected. He looked confused. Then why? You're fired. Silence. His hands started shaking. Nick, please. I stood, staring him down. You didn't hesitate to throw me out of your life. I'm just returning the favor. He let out a shaky breath, but I felt nothing. No regret. No warmth. Just a cold, satisfying finality. As he turned and walked out, shoulders sagging, I realized something. Revenge isn't just about getting even. It's about making damn sure they remember. And I knew he always would.